でも、何なのこの感情。わけわかんない。私、もう自分でなくなっちゃいそう。
何をする気だ。エンポリオアイスハレバー。女になった。どう？本当の自分に目覚めた感想は？
これが私。
あなたは生まれ変わったの。もう看守じゃない。ニューカマーよ。
ありがとうございます、王様。私、本当の自分に気づけました。
They've been pulled down into hell. Those silly little fools couldn't be more wrong. We're here and we're queer.
They're all queer like me.
Hello there. Just imagine me bursting out of a barrel. Okay, better? Hi, I'm Bridget Empire, and I'm going to be queen of the YouTubers. Yes, you heard that right. I, Bridget Empire, science and culture correspondent for fake and gay newspaper The Daily Telegraph, the only newspaper in Britain that has never printed a comic in its entire existence for fear that the pictures will come to life and haunt us, ate an essay fruit and became an essay woman. Since then, I gained the power to write video essays about all kinds of topics that for some reason around 1,000 people watch every week. This week, I want to talk about One Piece, one of the most prolific stories ever told. A manga and anime about pirates, the meaning of freedom, punching rich people in the face, and the inherent power of being gay. That's right, everyone's favourite Japanese cartoon show is fundamentally about how being gay is not only cool and good, but gives you literal superpowers. But I'll get to that. First, I had to make sure that none of you are lost. No, I'm not just talking about people literally getting their superpowers from fruit. That's not the gay thing I'm referring to. No, I'm not forgetting about Sanji. In fact, I will fucking get to Sanji. And for all of you that are scratching your heads, I'm not going to just leave you in the cold. So in brief, let me give you a rundown of what One Piece even is, and then I'll explain how it showcases how people find pride and even power and strength in queer identity. From Luffy himself to an entire revolutionary army full of gender-fluid anarchist prison-breaking drag queens. This is how One Piece finds power in queerness, by being riddled with, of all things, queer theory. One Piece is basically queer theory, the anime?
On n'est pas femme, on le devient.
Oui, c'est en somme la formule qui résume l'ensemble de mes thèses. Et ce qu'elle signifie est très simple, c'est que être femme, ce n'est pas une donnée naturelle. C'est le résultat d'une histoire. Il n'y a pas un destin biologique, psychologique, qui définisse la femme en tant que telle. C'est une histoire qu'il a faite, d'abord l'histoire de la civilisation, qui aboutit à son statut actuel, et d'autre part, pour chaque femme particulière, c'est l'histoire de sa vie. En particulier, c'est l'histoire de son enfance, qui la détermine comme femme, qui crée en elle quelque chose qui n'est pas du tout une donnée, une essence, qui crée en elle ce qu'on a appelé quelquefois l'éternel féminin, la féminité. Et plus les études psychologiques sur les enfants s'approfondissent, plus il est sensible, plus on voit avec évidence que vraiment le petit bébé féminin est fabriqué pour devenir une femme. Il y a là-dessus un excellent livre qu'une Italienne vient d'écrire, Elena Bellotti, ça s'appelle Du côté des petites filles, et on montre comment déjà, bien avant que l'enfant ne soit même conscient, on inscrit dans son corps, dans la manière de le faire téter, de le porter, de le bercer, etc., on inscrit dans son corps ce qui plus tard apparaîtra peut-être comme un destin.
Les différences biologiques qui sont évidentes, vous considérez qu'elles ne jouent pas de rôle dans le comportement ultérieur éventuel de l'individu?
Je pense qu'elles peuvent en jouer un, si, elles en jouent un certainement. Mais l'importance qui leur est qui leur est accordée et l'importance que prennent ces différences vient du contexte social dans lequel elles se situent. Je veux dire que, bien entendu, c'est très important qu'une femme puisse être enceinte, avoir des enfants, tandis que l'homme ne le peut pas. Ça fait une grande différence entre les deux. Mais ce n'est pas cette différence qui fonde la différence de statut et l'état d'exploitation et d'oppression auquel est soumise la femme. C'est en quelque sorte un prétexte au cours duquel se construit la condition féminine. Mais ce n'est pas cela qui détermine cette condition.
Most people will be aware of One Piece as that one anime that's over 1,000 episodes long, or, if you're like me, the one anime they didn't check out when they were a teenager because of its stylized art. What we're missing by ignoring One Piece, however, whether it's because it seems intimidating to get into, or because we want our anime to look less like OG Dragon Ball and more like Dragon Ball Z, is that One Piece is a story full of characters whose queerness is not only explicit, but literally gives them power, and not just through pride either, but by their very difference. They gain perspective, and sometimes even literal fighting ability, that's derived explicitly from their queerness. While many anime feature queer characters every now and again, most of the time these characters are either there for a homophobic or transphobic joke, or are dismissed by the Western fandom who hate to imagine that they just saw something LGBT in their anime, which they imagine is somehow inherently conservative, despite some of the most popular anime of all time being about disabled people destroying the evil heart of the government behind the military-industrial complex, an asexual immigrant dying to save humanity from space fascists, or asexual anarchists out to destroy the government with a revolutionary army headed up by explicit Rocky Horror tributes and a guy with a sick-ass face tattoo. That's this one. That one's One Piece. I was describing One Piece. The way that One Piece talks about queerness is, as any long-running series will be, mired in its own nature as a prolific story, in that there are highs and there are lows. But the most notable queer characters in the story, and the most triumphant story beats containing them, center on how people find not just pride in their queerness, but importantly, community and strength. And community is one of the key themes of the entire show. And this is the case from the literal main character of the show to one-off characters that appear for a split second during a prison break before anime Dr. Frankenfurter transes their damn gender. God, I wish that were me. This really happens, by the way. But how did this story emerge from a genre which can sometimes play it safe in terms of representing queerness? After all, the genre One Piece sits in, shonen, is literally made for young boys. It's what the name means. And with that target audience in mind, you might think a society as conservative as Japan tends to be might have an issue with one of their most popular properties of all time having such clear reverence for the gays. Well, the thing is, the man behind One Piece has been playing the long game. He's been pretty clear at first that he thought the series would be cancelled. Once it became clear he'd created a juggernaut, however, the gay dial turned up to 100. In brief, One Piece is the story everyone jokes that JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is. It's gay, and it revels in that most of the time. Okama Sanji blood scene aside, and we will get to that. For the uninitiated, One Piece began as a manga series written and illustrated by legendary mangaka and consummate workaholic Eiichiro Oda. The series began in 1997 and is still going, despite Oda initially claiming that the series would last for 5 years. In that sense, he really is the George R. R. Martin of manga. And speaking of being the George R. R. Martin of manga, One Piece is famous for its incredible world building, heartbreakingly compelling characters, tear-inducing character writing, and frankly, a horrendous amount of sexism. Yes, the levels of gay might be high in this anime, but the levels of male gaze upon women is ridiculously high considering the main character is literally asexual. One thing I wish Oda would realize is that if he draws something too horny for the page in his spare time to, blow off some steam, he doesn't need to adapt that for use in the manga. This is a problem, and I'll get to it someday, but for now this is about One Piece and the queer revolution, so let's shelve this for now. Suffice it to say, I fear Oda, much like George R. R. Martin, often lets his small helmeted friend take the helm when it's best to write with your hand on a pen, and not on your lad. Anyway, One Piece follows the adventures of Monkey D. Luffy, a big goofball and pure-hearted asexual king who wants to find the mysterious One Piece, a treasure left at the end of a dangerous fantasy ocean by a big badass pirate called Gold Roger. And, with One Piece in hand, Luffy aims to become the king of the pirates. This isn't a king in the traditional sense, however, as Luffy himself says.
支配なんかしねえよ。この海で一番自由なやつが海賊王だ。
This This is a consistent theme in One Piece, as the pirates, as outlaws roaming the open oceans, are the only people free from the tyranny of the One Piece world's omnipresent world government, an oppressive and authoritarian regime that you might recognize in some places as similar to some other world-spanning empires that pretend you can run your country however you want until you do something they don't like. Some other empires that are run as gerontocracies, social clubs of the richest people on Earth who owe their power to an accident of birth and... Oh yes, Luffy has stretchy powers because he ate the gum-gum fruit. In this world, there are magical fruit called devil fruit that give you powers but make you unable to swim. This lends itself well to the Looney Tunes-esque physical comedy the series pulls you in with, as well as the smash the state epic odyssey the show becomes once Luffy gets enough comrades together to become a force to be reckoned with. With his ideals strong and his arms elastic, Luffy sets out one day to go find the One Piece in a mysterious fantasy ocean known as the Grand Line, a level select-ass looking stretch of sea where you hop from one island to another instead of navigating using a traditional compass to go straight to the end because they don't work on the Grand Line. And to do this, he forms a pirate commune, consisting of amazing, wonderful characters that will fill your heart with joy, and also Sanji. Sanji is... he's there. Besides Sanji, though, we have, joining our Go-Today asexual captain, Deadpool from X-Men Origins Wolverine, Ginny Weasley, a character that might be racist? Maybe? We have Animorphs, Octopussy, Average American, Skeletor if he played Bard in Dungeons & Dragons, Big Sexy Tuna Steak, and, less permanently, Lucina Fire Emblem, Psyduck, Small Perverted Child, and Legs. Oh, and Sanji. Sanji is... This is going to be a hot take, brace yourself for this one. A closeted trans woman. I have evidence for this, but given how the One Piece Reddit reacted the last time someone posted this fan theory, I think it's going to take some convincing, so I'll not throw that one out there quite yet. Let's just say that, for now, I don't know if estrogen could have saved her, but it's worth a fucking try. This guy is a genuine sex pest, and to be honest, Brooke has problems in that department too, but at least he has redeeming qualities like being a skeleton and inventing rock music in this universe. With this eclectic crew, One Piece follows a long, hilarious, and equal parts heartwarming and heartbreaking ocean voyage. One that explores freedom, the importance of community, found family, and yes, power and unity between society's outcasts, particularly those you might consider to be a part of the LGBT+ community. Let me explain this by the way of several characters. First of all, Straw Hat Luffy himself, then the non-binary best boys, Bon Clay Mr. 2 and Emporio and Vankov, and then we'll talk about Sanji. For the purposes of this discussion, however, I'll put my opinion out here right now. One Piece is some of the best and worst anime depictions in the medium for trans women. But, on balance, I'm still offended more by the good ending in Steins Gate, and since 99.9% of the transphobic parts of One Piece are explicitly Sanji's point of view, if estrogen does save her, I'll forgive Oda for his sins against the community. For the record though, Hunter x Hunter still is my favourite trans story in anime. I'm sure at some point I'll cover that too one day, but now that I've promised 2 if not 3 spin-off videos, time to put my SAU no me to use. One Piece is a very interesting work to look at from the perspective of queer theory, a sociological and philosophical framework that, at least in part, don't this is the definitive take on an entire academic discipline, seeks to question standard assumptions of heterosexuality and gender identity, breaking down what's considered normal, why we consider those things normal, and how we came to these conclusions and what that says about the way we think and act as a society. Many of you will be familiar with queer theory through the idea of gender and sexuality as social constructs, where how men and women are supposed to act, for example, is according to frameworks set by society which are very questionable, such as crying being something that women do and men cannot, something that One Piece itself counters many times, with many characters in the show being told by many others in different scenes and contexts that it's okay to cry.
気絶しちゃった。すみません。だけど私泣かなかったから殺さないでください。何をされたって泣きませんから殺さないでください。
泣きゃいいじゃねえか!
As you might guess from the name, queer theory, however, it goes deeper than that. Queer theory questions our very idea of what a man is or a woman is, if they're even valid categories at all, and much more besides, building on the work of people like Simone de Beauvoir, whose famous quote, "One is not born but becomes a woman," is incredibly relevant to this discussion. Woman is a social role that people grow to fulfill in certain scenarios, and with it a whole bunch of assumptions are brought in. Perhaps the seminal text in terms of understanding queer theory is Judith Butler's Gender Trouble, which is influential as hell for a reason. I'm going to be drip feeding clips of Judith Butler throughout this video, but if you're interested in getting more into the actual theory behind my queer reading of the characters in One Piece, it's definitely worth checking out. And remember, before I get into this, that I'm not coming into this trying to tell you that your reading of these characters is wrong, but that me seeing One Piece, or at least parts of it, as a commentary on and around queer theory is purely from my own perspective. Please don't flame war me because I looked at Emporio Vankov and immediately thought about them as a statement on the inherent mutability of gender, sex, and sexuality, because that's not what I'm making this for. Although, if you watch the scene where Sanji struggles with his instant attraction to Ivankov's female form, you'll surely have thought about this too, no? Like, just a little bit, just a little bit.
久しぶりっちゃぶるね。
そんなタイプだ。いや、待て待て。あいつもこの国にいるってことはオカマなんだ。危ねえ危ねえ。
バナータは誰かしら？
俺はボンと突き出た胸、キュッと締まったヒップ。いや、俺は騙されねえ。
バタ足に何か用かしら？キャンディーボーイ。
ああ、聞きたいことが山ほどあるぜ。まず好きなタイプ。じゃねえ、ルフィのことだ。
ルフィ？麦わらボーイのことかしら？
ビンゴだ。やっぱりあんたはルフィと海軍本部にいたんだな。ルフィのやつめ羨ましい。じゃねえ、大変だったろう。詳しく話を聞かせてもらうぜ、レディー。
One Piece has several characters that act as essentially this very line of argument. This walking piece of queer theory. And part of why that's so interesting to me is that as they stand in contrast to other characters that totally and completely accept and act out the social roles of, say, heterosexual man, like a Sanji, with his gawking over every woman he passes by, insisting on a code of chivalry that actively results in him getting his ass beat by female enemies, and ultimately being unable to accept his own peace of mind and happiness because it goes against what society expects of him and what he thinks his friends expect of him, although I suspect Luffy would be more than happy to let Sanji out of the rigid cage he's built for himself. People who have already read or watched One Piece know that I'm talking primarily about a couple of fan-favourite characters here, namely Emporio Vankov and Mr. Two-Bomb Clay. But I'm not just referencing these two walking middle fingers to the idea of gender as fixed and immutable. What about the main character of the entire series? So, Monkey D. Luffy, captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, and the main character of One Piece is asexual. This isn't me making this up. Watch this brilliant video I'm about to stick on screen right now if you don't believe me. Oda has confirmed that anytime you see Luffy feign interest in a woman on screen, it's because he's trying to make a joke in front of Usopp, who he considers to be his partner in comedy in the crew. Luffy's lack of interest in women is in sharp contrast to some of the other members of his crew, notably Sanji. But as much as I might regret having to mention Sanji again already, it is in this contrast to Sanji that we see how Luffy's asexuality comes to the fore as one of his strengths, as something that leads to him having a unique advantage in situations certain other people would certainly fail in. Sanji's obsession with women, which ranges from creepy to full-on criminal at times, is shown as an explicit character flaw, with him even making it clear he knows this is so in the Water 7 arc, where Sanji loses a fight with one of the major antagonists of the arc because he refuses to hit a woman. This flaw stays with him after Nami encourages him to stick with it as a principle because she admires it despite how stupid it is. But Luffy has no such qualms. He sees men and women and those in between as equals, and will judge someone not by their gender, but whether he just likes them or not, like personality-wise, and whether they have wronged his friends. In fact, he makes a point that he finds Sanji and to a lesser extent Brook's obsession with women hilarious, as if this level of attraction is so unusual to him as to be ridiculous. This is confirmed through the story, when he eventually is sent to an all-female island full of 10 out of 10 smoke show baddies, where he meets the notoriously most beautiful woman in the world, Boa Hancock. Hancock uses her sex appeal to her advantage in fighting, being able to turn anyone who falls for her into stone. And while this works on every man and every woman she turns his power on, as well as occasionally inanimate objects, it doesn't work on Luffy. He uses this to his advantage to get the one-up on her, and even after befriending her, makes it clear he is completely disinterested in her as a romantic partner, but considers her a friend. Luffy's response, or lack thereof, to Hancock, perceived as an invincible threat to all men, is an explicit challenge to the idea that all men must necessarily act a certain way. Luffy does not perform the stereotype of masculinity, and in fact is not even partial to it as someone without any interest in women sexually. This confrontation of gender and sexual norms is not just presented as a point in Luffy's favour, but Hancock finds it admirable enough to fall into her own performance of traditional female heterosexuality, something she never has before, despite herself. These performances of gender, as this demonstrates, do exist as the stereotypes on occasion. But to dismiss these exceptions does everyone a disservice. In fact, Hancock did not fit a stereotypical idea of what a heterosexual woman would be before this, showing no interest in any of the legions of people who proclaimed her the most beautiful woman on earth. And who she falls for doesn't end up being any paragon of traditional heterosexual masculinity, but a weird, disinterested rubber man with a heart of gold.
I insist that what it is to be a woman, or indeed what it is to be a man or any other gender, is an open-ended question. We have a whole range of differences, biological in nature, so I don't deny them. But I don't think they determine who we are in some sort of final way. At the heart of these controversies is the distinction between sex and gender. But what is that distinction? How do we think about it? Sex is generally a category that is assigned to infants that has importance within medical and legal worlds. Gender is a mix of cultural norms, historical formations, family influence, psychic realities, desires and wishes, and we have a say in that.
Luffy's lack of sexual attraction isn't the only thing that I find worthy of note in our protagonist here, however. His carefree nature extends to a complete lack of judgment when it comes to societal expectations of what is and isn't acceptable when it comes to how people present themselves. Going beyond him befriending both an exhibitionist cyborg and a literal deer man, one of Luffy's most long-standing and heartwarming friendships outside of the main cast is a non-binary self-described Okama, whose government name I won't bore you with. This absolute legend is Mr. 2 Bonclay, or just Bonchan, as Luffy calls them. The moment Bonclay turned up on screen, I turned to my partner I've been watching this with and groaned, this is going to be a horrible transphobic joke, isn't it? I hate it when queers are always the villains. I'm happy to admit that I spoke too soon. I love Bonchan, and I love Bonchan's idol Emporio Vankov maybe even more. But to talk about these two with any level of justice, I'm going to need to explain the concept of Okama in Japan, and how One Piece sees this subculture and celebrates them as some of its most beloved, but also some of its most shoddily thought out at times, characters. Before we leave Luffy here, however, I just want to say how refreshing it is to see an asexual character as the flagship of one of the biggest and greatest stories in the world. And not only that, but Luffy's asexuality is not a character flaw, but a strength that he uses to his advantage. Luffy is not Sheldon Cooper. He is not written as if his lack of sexual attraction makes him unrelatable or alien. He's friendly to a fault, and loves everyone around him who gives him even the slightest reason to. And while he's not necessarily portrayed as neurotypical, that's not a bad thing. He's just not the stereotype of an asexual character on TV, and that's great. In fact, quite like Goku in this regard, he kind of reads as someone with ADHD, although maybe this is me projecting. Either way, Luffy does not resent his queerness. He's completely comfortable with it, and with expressing it. Not only that, but he revels in finding community with other queer people, naturally fitting in and instantly using the right pronouns for trans people, preferred names and everything. He's not just an ally, he's part of the community. Luffy is the A in LGBTQIA. No, it doesn't stand for fucking ally, it stands for asexual/aromantic. And if one more person suggests the A in LGBTQIA stands for ally, I'll use my armament hacky to enhance my essay fruit power and force you to Google the LGBT acronym right here now, motherfucker. Luffy's very existence and demeanour is, in its own way, a queering of the role of a typical male lead. As an asexual, extremely friendly and trusting man who exists as explicitly a counter to traditional ideas of what a man is supposed to be in the medium, i.e. heterosexual, gruff and closed up to his feelings, Luffy is in a way a subversion of the very idea of the gruff hetero male lead who barely says two words to even his closest friends and only shows emotions if they're anger or lust. I won't overstate this too much because if I'm being honest, Luffy inherits this protagonist as a mirror of a typical male leads from a character that largely is his progenitor, Goku from Dragon Ball. But whereas in Dragon Ball Z, Goku comes back from a time skip with a wife and kid, having slotted into the societally defined ideal of the nuclear family despite his apparent lack of interest in women, including his wife, Luffy actively turns down women throwing themselves at him. And where Goku is muscular, Luffy is skinny and literally made of rubber, although the two of them both represent similar queerings of the male ideal to various degrees. Okama, much like the term queer, originated as a pejorative word in Japanese, referring to what society perceived as men that acquired female traits, whether this be effeminate gay men, cross-dressers, non-binary people, or trans women who do not easily pass as cis. As you can see, this has the potential to be problematic, And in Oda's hands, it is when we're seeing it from Sanji's point of view. But it's completely the opposite when we see it from Luffy's point of view. As I mentioned earlier, Luffy is a much more open and carefree person than someone as obsessed with rigid gender roles as Sanji. And as such, most of the time we see the Okama of One Piece, it is with his eyes. And the way he sees them is fucking glorious. Following the use of Okama as a pejorative, the word has been reclaimed in Japan by the queer subcultures there as an escape from rigid binary gender roles. To claim the identity of Okama is to reject the role of man, whether that allows you to dress freely from gendered expectations or just express a non-binary identity. It is freeing to have an identity that basically stands in for just male? Nah, fuck that. This is notably distinct from trans women who are their own thing, but we'll get to that. There are trans women in One Piece too, and they stand apart from the subculture for the most part. And I say for the most part because there's a significant trans population of the community of Emporio Ivankov's New Kama Land, a rocky horror-themed neighborhood hidden in the most notorious prison in the world of One Piece, Impel Down. This neighborhood is made of a mixture of proud Okama and trans people, which is made possible by Emporio Ivankov's egg-breaking power, the hormone fruit, which can trans people's damn gender. And oh my god, how did I not watch this show sooner? This would have broken me. Everyone in New Kama Land, it's implied, has switched genders at least once, and while some have stayed in their new forms, some have switched back, free from the restrictions of knowing only one side of the binary, some change back and forth at will thanks to Ivankov's power, being explicitly gender fluid, such as Ivankov themselves and the right-hand person in Azuma, and some being very comfortable being, well, Okama, dressing somewhat femininely but proudly maintaining male characteristics too. When Ivankov is in male form, he presents this way, wearing makeup and fishnets because he's basically Dr. Frankenfurter. This presentation is very much in line with the first proud Okama we meet, Mr. Tu Bonclay, Monchan, for whom the phrase, not gay as in happy, queer as in fuck you, might as well have been coined. Both of these characters, but Ivankov in particular, are a demonstration of the works of Beauvoir that queer theorists like Butler later built on. Beauvoir's writings about the body not being immutable follow through to work on the fluid nature of gender and sex, and the differences between your assigned sex and which sex you become or present as. Ivankov changes their presentation depending on their mood, and even their male form is basically a fuck you to the idea of how men are supposed to look, act, and dress. Bonchan, too, takes us into their character, with their existence being explicitly a rejection of traditional gender norms, as is fitting for the first character in One Piece to proudly proclaim themselves Okama.
Some people very much like the binary framework for gender, and they want to find their rightful place either as a man or as a woman and to live peaceably, if not joyously, within its terms. Well, that's great. For them, gender is a prerequisite for living joyously in the world, for inhabiting the world well. They have struggled to name themselves with the category and to recognize themselves and to feel at home in the language of gender that they speak, and to find themselves acknowledged by the name, the pronoun by which they are addressed. Ethically considered, such claims are to be honored without qualification. If someone tells you that they are this gender or they want to be addressed by this or that pronoun, our job is to accept that. We do not challenge how people define themselves. We honor their freedom to describe themselves as they need to, and we do not deny the dignity that they have in naming themselves as they do. At the same time, there are some who cannot live very well, cannot find a livable life within the terms of gender, including some trans people who understand trans to transcend the binary relation. For them, other gender vocabularies are required for inhabiting the world, for feeling at home or relatively at peace in the language that they use. Sometimes they refuse the dominant language, and sometimes they accept it. So how do we think about the fact that some people need gender to feel well, to live well, and other people need to escape gender to live well, to feel well? Well, both, I think, are true.
Much like Emporio Ivankov, Bonchan's powers allow them to change their appearance at will. And in this sense, both characters could choose to take on male or female presentation at will, as demonstrated by both of these characters during the series. Both of them, however, most of the time, choose to present as somewhere in between, with both masculine and feminine characteristics, and are vocally proud of this, with Ivankov being more gender fluid and Bonchan being more traditionally non-binary, or as they would put it, when they stray from the path of a man, One may stray from the path of a woman, but there is no straying from the path of a human. If we are to fall, then may we scatter across the true sky, the Okama way. I might have to frame this panel. Yeah, I think I'm going to frame this panel. Bonchan is notable as the first explicitly trans character to show up in One Piece, if not the most traditional acceptable trans character to start with. We see them working for the Warlord Crocodile, hinted to perhaps be transgender himself, as Ivankov has dirt on him so bad he basically has control over his actions during the Impel Down arc, although this could always be something else. But remember, Ivankov has the power to change anyone's gender at will, and explicitly offers this chance to anyone who wishes it, and some that don't, which is a little bit more on the yikes side and leaning towards the whole gay agenda conspiracy theory that we're looking to convert the heteros because we can't procreate by natural means bullshit, but to be honest, I kind of love to see it. Like, turning your haters into women? Maybe kind of based. Coming back to Bonchan, they are working for Crocodile under two pseudonyms, Mr. 2 and Bon Clay. Most of Crocodile's underlings are assigned either a number if they are male, or a holiday if they are female, as their code names, and they are assigned to work in mixed gender pairs. Bon Clay works alone, which is an exception to the rule, and they also have both a number and a holiday codename, signifying their identity as equal parts male and female. Luffy picks up on this immediately and decides basically on the spot to be best friends with Bonchan, despite them being on opposite sides of one of Luffy's first major conflicts in the Grand Line. And the fact that even a scumbag like Crocodile has a trans-inclusive henchman policy is kind of heartwarming and hilarious in equal measure. Bonchan is an explicitly heroic character once their time working for Crocodile ends, as is another major character who I also love, and sacrificing themselves for Luffy on a number of occasions, such as their loyalty to Luffy as a friend, even after such a short time, and their honor as an Okama. They are very proud and brave and courageous and explicitly shown to be so, in contrast to the other characters who are quick to wimp out or take the low road such as Buggy or Mr. 3. Bonchan is a fucking gorgeous character once you realise what Oda is doing with them, and once you get past the suspicion that they're going to be just another transphobic joke kind of shown in an anime. Although, eventually, there will be Okama in the story that are basically just that transphobic joke.
何また私たちの血液が必要なの？だったら言って、いくらでもあげる。じっとしてなきゃダメよ、バカ。私たちがつきっきりで看病してあげる。断る。遠慮しなくていいのよ。じっとしてないと体に毒よ。お前らの存在が一番体に毒だ。
When the Okama are done well in this series, which is about 80% of the time, their way of life, their rejection of gender roles, their willingness to try on different genders to see what fits, and their desire to live explicitly outside gender presentations larger society deems acceptable, fits well into the questioning of gender roles that makes for a lot of the base of queer theory. Gayle Rubin's work around the repression that goes into teaching a child to become a man, and that this repression is something that can be broken free from, is especially relevant here, and fits well with One Piece's themes of freedom and forging one's own path in spite of existing power structures, letting yourself be guided by your own desires and dreams rather than what others want to force you to be. This freedom from the repression that goes into becoming a man is regained by the Okama throughout the series. Their freedom gained through alternative gender expression, letting their hearts determine how they live, rather than society or even their own bodies. The undoing of the societal programming of gender norms is an essential part of what it means to be part of the Newcomer, for example, as everyone in Newcomer Land has changed their gender at least once, and the majority live happily and proudly in the middle space, as a rejection of what society has told them they have to be all their lives, or even a rejection of what the other options are. Bonchan's identity is a fundamental part of their character and their self-perception. They hold two roles in a major criminal organization because of their identity, and their power is explicitly tied to their transgender nature. Like Ivankov, and like Luffy themselves, not only do they find power in their queerness is an asset, a strength, that they use to give them confidence and pride and to win fights with. Their power is literally derived from their queerness, and while Ivankov's is explicitly so, being able to literally trans anyone's damn gender at will, Bonchan's is not to be scoffed at in the regard either. Bonchan could choose to be literally anyone, and they choose to be this. To be Bonchan. To be this ballet dancer gangster crossover that's just a huge middle finger to gender norms. And even for a fandom as sometimes toxic as One Piece is, Bonchan is adored. They are incredible, and we stan. Bonchan is a perfect encapsulation of one of Judith Butler's most famous contributions to queer theory, which sounds like common sense to a lot of us today. That sex at birth should not determine how you live your life. Bonchan rejects a male identity, but they too reject a fully female one, choosing to perform gender in a way that feels authentic to them. Not male, not female, but just Bonchan. In this way, Bonchan demonstrates beautifully Butler's theory of gender as performance. Bonchan sometimes performs male or female gender, and their power is very on-the-nose way of demonstrating this, much like Ivankov too, Bonchan's personal hero. But at its core, Bonchan is neither male nor female. They are human, and when they perform gender, they perform it to signal to others around them that they are exactly that. Performing. Again, not failing as a woman, not failing as a man, but succeeding as a human being. And as if these literal demonstrations of how textually queerness gives major characters both literal power and personal pride in One Piece wasn't enough, the Okama and One Piece have their own martial arts that you can only learn from them. The Okama Kenpo, which Bonchan uses, which combines elements of ballet with martial arts techniques, and the Nukama Kenpo, which is Ivankov's spin on the martial art, which is taught on the island where they are queen and where Sanji spends 2 years training on to become so transphobic that he learns how to fly just to get away from the trans lobby trying to transgender, and Sanji fights using his legs, which is lucky really, because the newcomer Kenpo has a similar style to his own, and they have a special hormone-infused food recipes, which he has to learn because he's the ship's cook, and fucking Sanji. Sanji's story is the dark stain on this whole queer masterpiece of a story right now, and that's a shame because when Sanji first met Bonchan, he had no weird homophobic reaction to them. In fact, when Sanji arrives at this all-Okama island, he's persuaded to wear a dress and makeup because he has a girlish heart, something emphasized again in the Dressrosa arc, where he is described as having a pink mind. And when he is dressed up in girls' clothes and makeup, he describes himself as becoming someone else. And for the first time in pretty much the entire show, he looks happy. The entire rest of One Piece, unless Sanji's looking directly at a woman or occasionally talking to Luffy, he is scowling. But until he snaps out of his vacation as a girl once he hears of Luffy's fate following a major battle, he looks at peace for the first time in the show. And all this time he's hanging around with those transphobic joke characters I was terrified coming into the show the entire time. These motherfuckers are drawn like the fucking giants from Attack on Titan. These are drawn to express horror, and this just rings hollow compared to the rest of One Piece's story. A trend that continues into the Fishman Island arc that follows Sanji leaving the Okama Island, where he has a physical reaction to having blood donated to him by 2 homophobic caricatures. It's weird, and it doesn't feel like the rest of the show. But this is all from Sanji's point of view, explicitly. And in my opinion, he has a lot of internalized transphobia to deal with. Hell, he spends half an arc trapped in Nami's body after this, and he's so happy to be in a woman's body, you might well call his emotions something akin to gender euphoria. And at the end of this story, he begs not to be changed back at the end. He's transgender. In fact, Sanji existing as the counter to Luffy's lack of interest in traditional heterosexual male gender roles, and to the Okama society that actively tells gender roles to get in the fucking bin, is laid bare by his being directly confronted by queerness in the form of the denizens of Kamabaka Island. His ideals of being a scowling ladies' man who cares naught for men that would do anything for women with undertones of violence for those on the receiving end of his affection, meets its match with the gender-swapping Ivankov, who he cannot help but falling for the female form of, in spite of knowing what is inevitably coming. In his encounter with the Okama of the Kamabaka Kingdom, his gender performance is challenged, and in the face of this challenge, it completely crumbles, only to return when he feels the performance is once again needed, for the sake of another, in this case Luffy. From the way the story is told, it looks a hell of a lot like if it weren't for him getting bad news about Luffy, he wouldn't have been a he for very much longer. The irony here being that Luffy would be the first to accept Sanji as he truly is. But Sanji can't even bring himself to express himself authentically, and even in front of those who love him. Which is both sad and something many trans people can understand all too well. But I will get into that more next time I dive into One Piece, because I'm not done with Wano yet. And if I'm going to talk about how One Piece is both the best and the worst trans representation in anime, I'm going to have all the details on the characters of Yamato and Kiku. 2 confirmed trans characters, haters die mad. Oda confirmed it explicitly on the page, it's canon, and if I'm right, and I hope I am, but I kind of doubt I am, one day Sanji will be out too. I hope. Which wouldn't redeem him in my eyes, but it would make a lot of sense considering all the clues I've been following. I've been picking up what you've been putting down, Oda, don't worry. You may have fooled all your cis fans, but you can't fool me. I can detect a trans woman for 3 miles away. I can smell the soy in the water. And one day, I'll come for you, viewer. And with the power of the hormone fruit, I'll trans your damn gender. And then you will have as much power and confidence and clarity of mind as the incredible queer characters in One Piece. Hope you like becoming a girl. Until I find you and trans you. See you next time. Seriously, I'm not going yet. Like, there's a little bit left. Before I go, I love how Oda obviously has so much love for his queer characters, except for some weird exceptions. And the fact that they have so much going for them and are not a sob story, but a proud, heroic, and fucking badass fills my heart with joy. I truly think One Piece has so much to offer, and way more to offer than you might think before you check it out. It's already recognized as such by a lot of people, but I truly believe when it's done, it will be considered a modern masterpiece. Warts and all. And to be honest, there are a lot fewer warts than you might expect for an ongoing Japanese comic book that's been coming out since the 90s. Oda is a wizard at writing queer characters when he wants to be, and I'm hesitantly giving him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to Sanji's point of view, and that's partially because I kind of see myself in it. When you're trans yourself, you're hyper-aware of the gender signifiers you give off, especially the ones that out you to other people, or that you hate, and you in turn become hyper-aware of those in others. It's not a healthy outlook, and it's one driven by internalized transphobia, internalized misogyny, and the culture of hate and fear you absorb from society at large, but nevertheless I recognize it. I hope for the sake of this series having an overall coherent and celebratory outlook on the queer community as it does with 90% of its queer representation, that this ends up playing out how I hope it does. But it may well not, and I'll still love how One Piece finds power in queerness. Overall, one of the best things about One Piece is its theme of found family. The idea of found family is an active challenge to society's standards of the nuclear family with a wife, husband, and 2.5 kids as the ideal and the supreme unit in society. In The Traffic of Women, Gayle Rubin writes that the family as we understand it is a social construct that reproduces traditional gender roles. You grow up expecting to become a husband or a wife in a traditional heterosexual relationship in a nuclear family, isolated from community but for your partner and children for pretty much your entire life. And you will die thinking that such an arrangement is the only way anyone can possibly live their life, unless you can challenge those assumptions. By rejecting the supremacy of blood relations as opposed to being surrounded with those who you love regardless of how much DNA they share with you, and by forming a found family that is not bound by these blood relations and their associated gender norms, you give yourself more room, more freedom, to break from the roles society has decided you are limited to from birth. Luffy himself grew up with found family, in the form of Ace and Sabo, having never known his father and being without a mother. The three of them form a bond stronger than most of the blood relations in the series, and this is a repeated theme, in both the heroes and the villains of the series. Nami's adopted sister and mother are her family despite them technically not being blood relations. When one of Luffy's family dies, they do not mourn less because technically they weren't blood relations. Even Doflamingo, one of the main antagonists of the series, violently rejects his family in favor of his found family, a criminal gang with the sole purpose of aiding him in his horrific crimes. Frankie has an adopted family who are for all intents and purposes his real family, even if they're different species from him. Same with Chopper. And ultimately, characters like Sanji reject their abusive family outright and find solace in their found family, the crew of the Straw Hat Pirates. You might argue even that the fact that Luffy grew up with a strong found family, with chosen brothers and later a crew he handpicked, is the very thing that allows him to live his life with the freedom he has always yearned for, both in terms of his lifestyle as a pirate and in terms of his lack of sexuality, living with no pressure to conform, with no one pressuring him to become a husband or a father. In a way, the absence of a traditional family structure in Luffy's life is part of what allows him to be so open with not just his lack of interest in women, but with, well, all of his emotions. Luffy is not raised like Zoro or Sanji, learning to suppress their feelings and live through anger or lust. Instead, he is open about pretty much everything and loudly announces his every emotion, devoid of shame, able to be completely honest, feeling at peace, and absolutely free in the family he's made for himself on the high seas. And I mean that literally. The Straw Hat Pirates are, for all intents and purposes, a family, full of outcasts and weirdos with queer people, cyborgs, animals, skeletons, and even fucking Sanji of all people. And that's a theme of a lot of queer stories in general, because a lot of us are rejected by our birth families, but Regardless, we find strength in our community. A community that teaches us to be proud of ourselves, and own our differences, and find strength in our differences. That alone, in my opinion, would make this series worth reading or watching. Even if the incredible queer characters weren't a part of it. But they are, and they make this story even richer for their presence. Just like you watching make my life richer for your time and attention. So from me, and from the British Empire Pirates, thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of this one, for becoming my nakama, and thanks for watching. Until you become a great pirate. Hey everyone, thank you for watching me gush about a show I should have gone into literally like almost, what, fucking 20 years ago now? Maybe you're someone who's also been on the fence about One Piece as long as I have, and if so, hi. Turns out, is good. But even if you're not, thank you so much for watching, and especially thank you to all my patrons, and those of you who donate to me either on Ko-fi or PayPal at Bridget Empire or catherinestrickson@gmail.com respectively. That's BRIGITTEEMPIRE or CATHERINESTRICKSON@gmail.com. So the plan is with this thing is I would like to be able to pay for my groceries by the end of the year with this money. I am getting freelance stuff. It's few and far between, but it is happening. But yeah, few and far between, and it costs a lot of money to live. Turns out, the cost of living's gone up. So, and I would love to be able to like not worry about that when I'm making these videos because I love making them. So if you want to help me out, please donate to me on Ko-fi or PayPal, or better yet, sign up to my Patreon, where if you sign up, you can get early access to all my videos, get exclusive content, get on the Patrons Discord, get my Nintendo Switch friend code, get discounts on any future merchandise, and get your name read out at the end of each video, just like Jay Peterson, Courtney Burmack, Sleepy Slug, Philippa Tobrogo, Belligerent Kitten, Apostrophe Hyphen, Simon Piglet, Meredith Matthews, 4IS, RT Wolf, Hayden Gayle, Greg Noble, No Kings Only Fools, Deanna McMillan, Caroline Regalado, Alexandra Lilly, Howard Lott, Lara Vanderloon, Scarjan, and Joey Cobalt. Thank you for putting up with me for this. This was a long one, but I had to. I've watched like a million episodes of One Piece now, and I just had to talk about it. I'm obsessed. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. Not enough people talking about the gay stuff, and I think that's because a lot of the online community is massively homophobic because it's an anime community. Well, now I'm here, so feel free to share with me who you will trans in the Straw Hat crew. Everyone trans can proven otherwise. Fuck Reddit. Okay. See you next time. Wealth, fame, power. Lindsay Ellis, queen of the YouTubers, obtained this and everything else the YouTube algorithm had to offer. Her words on her last video that wasn't a Nebula exclusive drove countless souls to the internet. You want my subscriber count? You can have it. I left the audience together, all in one piece. Now, you just have to find it. These words lured queer people with egos a little too big for their boots all over the world to the internet in pursuit of dreams greater than they've ever dared to imagine. Having an audience that willingly listens to hours of them explaining their special interests over the internet. This is the time known as the Great Bread Tuber Era. Hello there. Just imagine me bursting out of a barrel. Okay, better? Hi, I'm British Empire, and I'm going to be queen of the YouTubers.
Wee, 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 wee. Wee, 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 wee.